All right, everyone. So this is going to be your demo on how to make your template for your coil vase project. And there are a few key things to note before starting. You have some dimensions that you need to be within. So first of all, you have the height. It needs to be within 7 inches to 9 inches tall. So from the very bottom to the very top. We need to have a base that is 3 inches of a diameter. And then we need to have the widest part of that vase be within 4 to 6 inches. Now, this is where most students get too far. So 6 would be the farthest you can go. The wider we get, the harder it is to fit them all into the kiln. And there's a lot of you, so we got to stay within these restrictions. So stay within these and keep these in mind. And then we're going to make our template that we can use to guide how we build our coil vase throughout the process as we move from the bottom upwards towards the top. And it will kind of keep us in line with everything. So the first thing is you're going to need is a construction piece of paper. And we're going to fold it in half long ways. Or I guess you would call this hot dog style. So fold it in half. And since these are going to be our dimensions, we basically kind of need to think of things in halves for the wider parts. For the tall, it's going to be the same. So on the folded side, so this is the folded side, you are going to want to mark where 9 or 7 inches in is, or you could even be within that, right? So between 7 and 9. So I'm going to do a 9-inch vase. So I'm going to go all the way up to here. So there's 9 inches. I'm just labeling that for myself. And then now this here and this here are going to be in half because since it's folded and when I draw it, I'm only drawing half of my actual vase. So with that in mind, I want this base, since it's supposed to be 3 inches, to be 1.5 because 1.5 times 2 is going to be 3. So I'm going to mark that there. This is 1.5 from the fold to that marking. And then I'm going to decide how wide I want my vase. So between 4 and 6. I'll go 5, so I'll be a little different. So that means I need to mark 2.5. So I will actually mark it a couple times. So put it on the half mark, 2.5, 2.5, and 2.5. Also, notice that our rulers don't always start right at the end. It's the first marking that is on that ruler, so make sure that's where you're starting your count and not at the end of the ruler if there isn't a marking there already. And with the pencil, I'm just going to draw a line here through those markings for the wider part because I want to be within that dimension. Okay, so now I can start to draw the shape of my vase. So I'm going to duplicate that and only draw half. So down the middle, I'm going to be drawing half of it. Kind of sketch it out a little bit first. Bring the neck in a little bit. And then this is going to be my widest part. And bring that down to the 1.5 mark. So I'm not going past the 2.5 here. So remember this one was 2.5. Okay, then I'm going to cut that out. I'm happy with this. Clean it up as needed. Notice that while I'm cutting this out, it's still folded. And so now when I open it up, this is how big my vase is going to be in real life. So once it's all completed and constructed. So now it's got, just to double check, a 3-inch bottom. It then has the widest part, which is 5. I went a little bit over the 5, but that's okay. As long as it's between the 4 and 6, which we are. And then the height, we've got at the bottom 9. So this is the piece we need to keep, because basically we're going to construct our pieces of our vase. So like, let's say this was my coil vase that I'm making. I'm trying to see, does it fit within this empty negative space here? And is it touching the sides of that template? If it does, you're on track. Okay. So that's just the tutorial for the template part. And then now I'm going to do the next part, which I guess will be part 2, showing you how to use the extruder and like how to start actually making and constructing the vase itself. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use the extruder so that you can get an even thickness of coils, and it's a lot less work than having to do it by hand. Side note, there's some construction happening next door in the next classroom, so apologies if it's a little bit loud. Hopefully you don't hear it too much. But first things first is when you come into class, it may already have one of these bags on it, and that's because it was being used previous day and we didn't clean it out, and we wanted to just keep recycling the clay, because this doesn't necessarily go down all the way and get all of the clay out. There's always going to be a little bit left in there, so we just want to make sure that we keep it moist so that when we do come back the next day, we are able to then just continue, add a bit more in there, and then just start where we left off, because it is a pain to clean up if it ever dries inside. Also, if it is your week for communal cleanup, make sure if you are the last one of the day or period, you are covering it with this bag so that it isn't drying out, okay? So first things first, this is the lever. You're gonna have to pull this up just a little bit. This part comes out and just slides, and then just take the plastic bag off itself. Now, the extruder is made up of several parts, which is the lever itself, the die, and a blocker. So it'll block all of the other ones, because you've got 4 on here, but we just want to use one of them. And then you would use one of the rubber blockers and just block all the other ones except the one that we actually want to use. So I already have them set up for you, and that's the one that you're going to be using for this project. So you don't need to necessarily worry about this, but sometimes it gets loose or it gets knocked out because it's not on there tight enough, so you might just have to readjust it to the one that we are using. If you want something thicker or thinner, then you're going to have to do that on your own and just do it by hand. So thinner would be easy because you can just take what's already here and you can just use your hands to thin it out at the table, or if you want something thicker, then just make a few thicker ones straight from the table. The clay that you're using does have to be wedged, otherwise it's going to pop and your coils are going to be cut short because of the area that's going to be coming out of it. And once you do have it finally wedged, you want to make sure that it is more of a rectangular shape, and you have to use quite a bit so that this way, when you squeeze it out with using the lever, there is enough to go beyond the leftover that's going to be remaining. Remember, it does not go all the way down and get all of the clay. So first things first, as I said, pull this out, move this piece forward, and then you're going to drop your clay inside. You're going to make sure that this now goes into the machine all the way, make sure it's going all the way back, and slowly lower it down until it lines itself into the actual extruder itself. A lot of times people just go really quick and then they're going to start bending or breaking this, so be careful. So go slowly. And then when you are doing the compressions to actually squeeze the clay or extrude the clay out of it, you are not going to be like jumping on it, you're not pulling on it. This is a metal pipe, but in between there's a connector that's a little bit softer and it can break, especially the big dudes. If there's too much pressure, it can snap. So please be careful. However, you do want to use your full body strength. So kind of like when we're wedging, where you have 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and then you're wedging onto the table. This is the same idea as well. If your clay is too hard, you're gonna have a really hard time actually getting it out of that extruder. So you're going to just 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and you're gonna push down, and you can see that it's already coming out. So this would be the best thing to do. Put yourself directly in front of it and push down. I'm gonna show you from the side so that you can actually see what's happening. It's a little harder from the side, but from the front, you have more leverage. Then you'll just grab this and put these aside and use the clay that you have in there until you can get it out. See how being directly in front of it is a lot quicker. There's also the bucket below there. Make sure it is, because sometimes it does catch any trash. And when you're making these coils, only make enough that you feel like you're going to be using for the day. If you make too much and you're trying to make them all at once, then they're going to dry out very, very quickly, and you're going to have issues later trying to salvage them, or you're going to have to re-wedge clay or rehydrate and do all the excess work. So we can see it's almost there. So there's a little bit gap left. This lever is going to hit the extruder. And now that it's all the way and it hit the piece itself, this is all that I can get. But there's still some more left in there. So that's why that bag is important. If it's still in the middle of the period, you can just add more clay in there, and it'll stack on top, and then you just keep extruding. But again, if you are the last one of the day or period, take the bag, pull it out, and you're gonna wrap this up and tuck the bag into the extruder, and then just push it down a little bit until it keeps it all nice and contained. All right, so to start making the vase, we need a slab base first. So grab a piece of clay, make sure it's wedged, pancake it a little bit, and then put it between 2 rulers. Please ignore all of that background noise from the construction next door. And then take your rolling pin and roll it out until it's nice and even, keeping sure you stay on top of the rulers and don't go side to side. So we want an even thickness, which is just as thick as the 2 rulers. So once it no longer moves, it is nice and even. So just back and forth. That's pretty good. You can compress it a little bit as well. So just kind of take a rib tool and just flatten that out a bit. Don't squeeze it too hard, because then you're going to really thin it out. Do the other side. And if you're wondering why we do this, this will help prevent any cracking during firing. It just compresses all of the clay together. So my template shows that I have a 3-inch base. So this is the base that this is the clay I'm gonna be using to make that base. And I already know that if I just take the water bottle, this is already a 3-inch base, and I can just trace that. So that's just one thing that I could do. Or the other would be if you have a, different size bottle, or you need more precise measurements, then you can use a compass with a pencil, and just like before, put it at 1.5 inches, just like this. And then I can use that to make my circle. So either use this and then use the pencil as like your needle tool just to kind of mark it. Don't cut into it yet, just mark it. And that will give you your base. Careful, if you got a hole, just kind of patch it up, or just trace the bottle itself. And that could also be a little easier. Maybe it's not as clean, but it's a good representation of how you can do it two different ways. So from there, just cut it out. Straight down, no need to angle or bevel this. And then all this extra clay can then be wedged and used to make more coils. So I'm just gonna put that aside and I'll make more coils with that later. So here's my base. This is what I need. You could also change the shape if you want to. If you want it more of an oval, that'll kind of change the whole form of the vase itself, which is okay. Also, if you did like a flower shape or a star shape, that's gonna really change the whole overall idea and design. But it can get more difficult if you do more complicated shapes. So this, I'm just gonna put aside for now. Next, I'm gonna take all of my coils and to start, if you look at my design here, I've just got horizontal coils at the beginning. So that could be pretty easy. So I'll show you that first. Put these out of frame for now. I'm going to score and slip every single one of them onto the base or onto the previous coil. You might see some other tutorial videos that don't do this. Now, it does tend to work. However, sometimes they do separate during firing or it's not a full watertight seal. So you gotta be careful and mindful as to what you're trying to go for. If you want more of a lantern that has holes that are intentionally like negative space, then that's fine. You can kind of just blend them as long as they are still soft pieces of clay. As these start getting harder, leather harder, anything else later, it's going to be a lot more difficult to keep them together and create a watertight seal. So scoring and slipping. Now I want to make sure I have enough to go around the base. Now notice that the design, it gradually gets wider, so that means I'm gonna go slightly on the outer edge of this previous coil. And if you remember when we did our foot for our pinch pots, I'm gonna cut this at a diagonal so that they're gonna line up perfectly wherever they overlap. So this is where it overlapped. I cut it at a diagonal, remove the ends. And so now this is gonna fit just nice like that. Okay, now slip it. And put slip to slip, score to score. Whoa, that was a big thing that happened in the construction room. And then technically you're gonna have to blend this all together, but since we're stacking so many, I'm gonna skip that part for now and I'll just blend them all together. Well, I take that back. I will blend the first one down into the base. And I'm only blending the inside. If I start blending the outside, I'm gonna lose all those coils that I'm trying to create. Also support the edge, the outer edge, because it's gonna, every time you start blending from the inside, it's gonna keep expanding it. So if you're not supporting it, it's just gonna get worse and worse, and then eventually it's gonna blossom and not be able to support its weight, and it's going to be an issue. Okay? Now, I just showed you how to score and slip them together, which we all know we should be doing for every single one. For now, I'm going to be skipping that for time's sake, and I'm just going to be stacking them so that you have an understanding of how to start progressing from here. So again, as this gradually gets wider, I need to go slightly on the outer edge. And then the next coil is going to even go on that slightly outer edge. And now you can see it's starting to form this diagonal here that I want for my vase. Now, I'm going to again cut it at that diagonal where they overlap, and then do my next one. And the next coil will be on the outer edge, and then the next coil will be on that outer edge. So that's going to expand wider and wider and wider. Now, you might be wondering, well, where does the template come in? So the template's going to come in, and I'm going to put it in between like this. So my clay is going to be in between the template, and I'm trying to make sure that it's fitting within the empty space. So I can see right now it's a little wide already before I start blending. So I'm going to adjust a little bit, and then that's a lot better. It now fits within the frame. So I'm really just looking through the empty negative space to make sure, if I switch it from this angle to this one, that it is now fitting within that frame. Okay, so it should fit in there. If this starts to expand, it's not working. You need to go smaller and adjust. Or if it's too small, you need to start expanding the clay and getting wider. Okay? So that one's a little short. And take this one and go a little wider. And so for my first part, I'm just gonna keep it as 3 horizontals. So now that I've done a few stacks of my coils, I'm gonna blend all of that together. So I can do it with my finger, or I can do it with a rib, or I can do it with a modeling tool. Modeling tool might be a little easier. But always support the outside. You can go up and you can go down, but really make sure you're blending it, getting rid of any open areas, any pockets that are being created by stacking. All right, and then you can go back and clean it up a bit more later. So far I've got my base on there, and I've got my first row of coils, or rows I should say. Now, for balls, you can easily just make, little balls of clay, and you can score and slip them on there together, like so. And if you do it one by one like that, it might take you quite a bit of time, because you can see now it's already like eating up a good chunk of my time. And yes, you should still be scoring and slipping these together, honestly, just to be more water safe. And I like mine to be different sizes, so like some are big, some are small. It has a bit more interest to it. And then they'll sort of stack and build onto there. And then once you blend it, it will sort of fill in all those pockets. The other thing you can do, though, if you really want to make sure you're getting all those pockets, is to stack them not on the actual vase or the base that you've already started, and instead you're going to lay them on the table, and just like coils, you're now going to make a strip of these spheres. The thing is though, and of course you want yours to be smooth and you don't really want those random textures to show through. You want it to be cleaner. But I can carefully, and I don't want to do this too hard, but I can start blending these together while it's on the table. If I push too hard, I'm going to flatten the other side. So you only want to blend it enough that you're filling in all of the gaps, but also smearing the clay into each other so that they become one. So you might get a little bit of flatness on the other side, but the ball look or the sphere look should still be there. You can kind of even flatten out the bottom that you want to attach it to. And so now I have a strip that I can use and carefully bend / score and slip onto this piece here, okay? So I could do that all the way around. I'm not gonna go through that because that'll take a lot of time for the video, but that's what you could do to kind of like make sure it's all stable and get done a little bit quicker. Now, let's look at this piece right here in the center, this section. As I start working towards that area, you might be thinking, I need to make so many different coils. I need this wavy one in the middle, like as one big one. And then I need to also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Just for this side here, I would need 15 or 16 different coils. That is a lot of work. Instead, here's what I would recommend you do. And this is gonna save you a lot more time as well. So I'm gonna put this aside. And let's think about this. All of these centered, like curved triangle shapes that are made up by these horizontal lines are basically the same thing. So why not treat it as one big stack of horizontal lines here, or coils. Again, these are scored and slipped to each other. I'm just not doing it now. And I will blend the whole backside, being careful not to push too hard that I'm losing the texture on the other side. Then I can flip this over, and so now I've got my 3 together, and I can now start making my triangles. So I'm gonna cut it at a diagonal. This becomes scrap. And then say this is how big I want my triangles. And then I recommend taking that same triangle and using that to mark everything for the rest, so that it's consistent all the way throughout. So instead of making so many pieces individually, scoring and slipping all of that, that's a lot of work. Big brain, or I guess I should say lazy brain of me, thought of this differently so that I don't have to do so much work. So it's big brain, but it's kind of derived out of laziness. I didn't want to have to do all of that. Okay, and then now what can I do? Just stagger these. And then put my longer coil in between. move those out of the way. It's getting a little crowded here. And I'll do that for now. But if you're making this as one strip, make sure that this strip is long enough to go around the whole circumference of wherever it is you're going to be placing it. And another reminder, if it's getting wider, then it's got to be a little bit smaller at the base, because that's where it's going to be less wide, and then it's going to be longer up here at the top. So this piece up here should be slightly longer, and this will be slightly smaller, because as it wraps around the circle of the base, it is going to need to expand out at the same time. So if you just make it straight, it's just going to go straight up. But if you need to expand out like it is here, this thickness or wideness here is smaller than the wideness of the top as we move up. So it's going to be more like that in how it should look. But again, I would make sure this is all together. So I'm going to flip it over. And so now I have to combine all of these pieces together. So really, I only would have to score and slip like 5 pieces together, as opposed to scoring and slipping 15, 20, 30 separate individual sized pieces of coils. That just makes no sense. I'm too lazy for that. And you guys are getting senioritis right now. You didn't want to do that either. Don't get mad at me, that's just facts. And then this can go on as well. So now it's another piece. So that's another way just to think about stuff. Now, as you're building and making your way up towards the top, you can think of other ways of doing your coils too. So that's just a way of thinking of stuff fast. So this is only wavy so far, the spheres, and horizontal pieces that I've talked about. But you could also do other things with it as well. If you did the same thing, you can basically create different kinds. You can do vertical the same way. So if you made a bunch together vertically, you can score and slip it and then just stack them together. These can then go like this way. Right, and that way, and yes, I'm not doing the faster method, but if I just chop these up the same way, but made more rectangles, I can do them, interchangeably, vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, and so on. You could also think about doing spirals. If you want to do spirals, you have your basic spiral, which is just going to be like that. But if you want to have more interest or change it up, you could turn these into squares or even turn it into triangles. So how would I do that? Just kind of pat the sides, tap it, and now I have more of a squared look that will actually have less gaps in between than if I had a rounded one. You could twist your coils. So if you had 2, you can twist them together and wrap them. If you had 3, you can braid them. If you want to, and I would recommend doing this after it's actually on the vase itself, you could texturize it as well. So if you wanted to give it stamps or textures or just like extra details so that it shows later on during the glaze process, then you can texturize it, you can stamp it. There's all these other things you can do. And then even if you wanted to do something different, like let's say for some reason you wanted to do drawn designs on this. So let's zoom in a little bit. Say maybe every other one, I want to do something different that has a drawing on it. You can also include smoothened out coils, but remember, you can only do 25% that are completely smooth. So maybe every other one. And maybe here, this is where you would include like a stamp or a drawing. Maybe if at the beginning of the year you did your name 3D printed stamp that we made together, you can then use that to stamp it. You can carve into this. It changes it now to be a little less busy as well. But remember, carving is better when it is more leather hard. So right now it's still really soft, so it's gonna look kind of funky, but even if I just took like my marker here and I wanted to stamp it, this is actually kind of better for stamping because it's still somewhat soft. Already, see, too soft. Shouldn't have used water on that one. And I got a whole new design in there, which is completely different. All right, and some parts, like as we move on to here on this design, as we get up here, you might have to just stack them and then kind of build around it, because this is no longer a strip, right? This is like basically a stripe of a pattern, another stripe and another stripe. But up here, it's more organic and kind of flows from the bottom to the top. So this one, you're gonna have to sort of stack and build your way up individually. This one's a little bit quicker just because it is like that strip. And there's so many other things you can do as well. You know, you can cut out and remove portions. And like if I was to just want this maybe more open, then after maybe I've kind of constructed it, I can leave it that way because maybe that's part of the design. I just horribly finished this, but you get the idea. So it's more of an open neck bottle, like a V-neck. There's so many different things that you can do and play with, but that's generally the idea. And the last thing I need to say too is be careful, because as you start stacking, the heavier and heavier this gets, this is gonna wanna fall and collapse, and it's gonna expand. It might even fold over itself like a fupa, like a muffin top belly. You're gonna have to blow dry it every now and then so that the bottom is a bit leather hard and is stable to support all the new weight you're adding to it. If you don't do that, it's going to collapse. Also, if you keep wetting it too much or spraying it before putting it away in the bag every day, it's gonna be broken by the time you come back in the morning. So you need to be very careful on how wet this is and how stable you need it to be as you progress through all the different stages. All right? Okay, thank you.